JoJo's Bizarre Adventure is a weird but fantastic series. From the awesome character designs and creative attacks, any fan of anime, action, or music would love this. It's no surprise that this beloved series got itself many video game adaptations. Like with everything, some games were decent or meh, while others were really good, stood out, and were quite amazing. There were two games created by Capcom that came out on the Sony PlayStation and Sega Dreamcast. Well, really one game for PlayStation and two for Dreamcast, technically. Either way, Capcom did a great job bringing the vibrant look and feel of the Jojo series to a fighting game. It's no surprise that Capcom was able to pull this feat, seeing how they were the guys behind the beautifully animated Street Fighter 3 games. Funny enough, these JoJo games, JoJo's Venture and JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, use the very same engine the Street Fighter 3 games would use, the CPS-3. This engine was powerful, and we wouldn't see ports of these games until the Sega Dreamcast. All but for one. Now, I did say one, so there's no way a CPS-3 game came out on PlayStation, right? Right? Well, the answer is yes. Capcom decided to port JoJo's Venture to the much inferior Sony PlayStation, and once again we got a mixed result that ended up not being that bad. Before we dive deeper, guys, I just want to say thanks for sticking around and watching these videos. If you like Capcom content, then think about subscribing to the channel and dropping some likes. Your support is much appreciated. Now, back to the video. So JoJo's Venture was released in the arcades in 1998, and it used Capcom's incredible CPS-3 engine. The following year, an update to the game was released called JoJo's Bizarre Adventure: Heritage for the Future. The Dreamcast version of this game was released in 1999 and features both the original and revised versions of the arcade game in their original forms. The 1999 PlayStation version is based on JoJo's Venture, but features the additional characters from the second version of the arcade game and an exclusive Super Story Mode which covers the entire Stardust Crusaders story arc. Now, as was mentioned before, this game used the CPS-3 engine, which was used to power games like Red Earth and the Street Fighter 3 series. Now, what possessed Capcom to port this game to the PlayStation is beyond me, but here we are. And what we have again is clearly an inferior game, but not a bad attempt at all. In fact, when you take everything into consideration, it's amazing this port was even done. The funny thing is, I played the Dreamcast version of these games first, so technically I went backwards in terms of quality. Right away, I just have to say and put it out there, the Dreamcast versions are clearly better than the Sony PlayStation version. Animations are better, the sound effects are better, the special effects or graphics are better, but with that being said, the PlayStation did an admirable job. Sure, it's got some frames missing, and sure, there aren't any special effects like when you do a super, the screen doesn't zoom in on the character. Heck, the stages don't expand or zoom, they pretty much stay fixed on the PlayStation. Another huge blow is the sound. The game sounds recorded, and I mean heavily recorded compared to the arcade and Dreamcast. It almost sounds like the game was recorded using tin cans or something. It feels worse than the usual Capcom cut back on the audio trick to reduce RAM technique that was frequently used in the Marvel vs. games. Again, because it's the CPS-3 engine, it's to be expected and forgiven. Now, even though there are frames missing, they did a pretty fantastic job of hiding it. While in other titles like Marvel vs. Capcom or Darkstalkers, it's highly evident. In JoJo, it's visible, but not glaring to the point of distraction or silliness. I also noticed the input and controls on the PlayStation felt a little different, a little laggy with some delay. Now, don't know if it was just me, but the Dreamcast version really felt smooth to me in comparison. Now, talking about the frames, I did notice most of the cuts seemed to take place in the stands. The stands have frames cut from them, but also have a ton of detail removed. They are highly pixelated and, quite frankly, look like dead ghosts as opposed to stands for the characters. Now, the Sony PlayStation does have a mode that the Dreamcast version does not have, and that is the Super Story Mode. The Super Story Mode is the regular JoJo's Bizarre Adventure story, but just a lot more. It covers the entire Stardust arc, but also has some interesting mini-games that can be played. These mini-games were taken out of the Dreamcast port, and I don't know why. These weren't super fun, but they're still extras in games, and why subtract? Why not just add more? Something else that really hurts the PlayStation is the constant loading. The game has to load quite a bit, and again, you understand because of the engine, but still can get a little annoying. I gotta say though, this really isn't a bad port. It's clearly inferior, but I still enjoyed my time. You have to really appreciate the effort, especially considering the limitations of the hardware. You're essentially getting the JoJo experience, albeit at a diet value, but it's still the game. I was really expecting the game to run extremely poor, and I mean, who knows, maybe it does, and I'm just extremely tolerant and patient, but it felt fine to me for the most part. All of the characters are there, and they all have their moves. Again, I can't overstate how impressive it looks on PlayStation. I mean, I'm not kidding when I say it's essentially the same JoJo game you got on the Dreamcast. Now, if you're looking for the game to play exactly or close to the arcade version, then I would suggest you steer far away from this. But if all you have is a PlayStation and you want to try JoJo, then by all means, this is a fine way to play it. For Capcom to squeeze this onto the PlayStation is nothing short of a miracle, and I honestly miss these days. I miss when an arcade game would come out and getting these ported to inferior consoles meant a wizardry of work from the developers. They would have to come up with creative ways to fit these games and would have to implement cuts, of course, but would also look to add things so the experience didn't feel cheapened. Now, if you love JoJo's Bizarre Adventure and love fighting games, then I can't recommend this game quite enough. It will satisfy everything you ever wanted with a project from the JoJo series and Capcom. The Sony PlayStation version isn't a bad way to play this game, and I enjoyed it for sure. Sadly, the US version of the game is extremely expensive. We're talking about hundreds of dollars and even thousands in some cases. I had to purchase the Japanese version of this game as that was much cheaper. So if you can find this game, whether it be PlayStation or Dreamcast, then I would definitely recommend it. Well, that's my little sum up and short review of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure on the Sony PlayStation. If you guys enjoyed this video, like as I said before, think about subscribing or dropping a like. It would be much appreciated. And also drop a comment. I always love the discussion. And tell me what you think about this game if you played it. Is it a pretty decent port, or does it completely suck and just stick to the Dreamcast and never touch this ever again? With that being said, I want you guys all to take care and please have a wonderful rest of your day.